Hey, welcome to the Chairmen podcast. Co-host here, Nathan Bourne, with my BFF.
Ned.
We'll get
I'm
it.
now purposefully
Yeah, I
sucking at
noticed. I totally noticed. So, Ned, I know we prepare in great detail for extended periods of time.
Yeah, it's pretty wild
for
how
these
much, yeah.
episodes. What are we talking about today?
Change management.
Ooh, okay.
No, we're going to talk today about just like what I'm going to call, because I'm so good at branding and I listened to our last podcast and got even better. If you haven't listened to that, you have to now. But we're going to talk about like the cult of change. And inside of business, this feel of, and I think honestly, change in a lot of entrepreneurs' brains is like a drug. They feel like they have to be changing things constantly and iterating constantly because change a lot of times feels like work, when in reality, change, especially as you grow your business, can really start to mess with the momentum that you have. And I've been a part of organizations and had leadership that changes every little thing all the time, because in a lot of cases, busy feels like momentum, when in reality, it really a lot of times halts your progress.
Yeah, this is such a tough topic. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Because on one hand, 'tis true, like the only constant is change, right? So innovation, iteration, progression, it's going to happen. It must happen. But I think there's like an art and a science to the change management. And I know, even like in the short time that you've been at with For My Core, you are a catalyst of change, right? Like you're a force of nature. Mm-hmm. And we've kind of talked like around this a little bit, actually. But in this context, the culture we developed, what you might even call like the muscle memory, or like the warm up, or just sort of like building a actual infrastructure for change, is what has allowed a leader like you to come and make the proper changes that are real changes, not change for the sake of change. So there is like a good, bad, and ugly of this.
Yeah, I think like that's the thing, is honestly, a lot of what we've talked about in previous episodes allows for change to happen here and it not feel like this massive upheaval. And I think also it's always about being very pointed on what needs to be changed, not just saying, oh, we're going to build a new playbook and we're going to rewrite the script and we're going to change what we're selling and add this new product, when everything is working. And I think that's at least what I've seen in my career, is a lot of organizations, they think that they just have to be doing something else on top of the thing that's already making them money, instead of just doubling down on the thing that makes them money. Like, in my opinion, business is doing the boring stuff consistently over time better than anyone else for a longer period than anyone else. And it's doing the boring thing. And here's the thing about business. If you're building a legacy business that we've talked about before, it's all
connected.
Yeah, look at that. There's a thread, baby. It's like, if you're building a legacy business, it's going to get boring. If you have a roofing company and it's been 40 years, guess what? Roofs haven't changed in 40 years. Mm-hmm. You put shingles on it. You got to go down to the plywood. You put the stuff in the gutters, and it's like, it's all going to be boring. But the roofing companies that outlast the, small guy that just started because he knows he can make a couple bucks here and there, the reason is because they've stayed consistent in what they're offering, their systems, their process, their structure. And I think, honestly, there's a difference between iteration and just overhauling an entire process.
Yeah. I've got thoughts. So many thoughts.
Go, hit me with them.
Yeah, trying to, as you're sharing there, I'm like thinking, where do I want to start with this? Because I agree, I concur that there's a mastering of the mundane. Mm-hmm. I've heard it before. And these laborious, boring, mundane, day in and day out tasks are part of the process.
Yeah.
They're part of being world class. They're part of being great. And yet you have to be at the cutting edge and be innovative. So I think the tension between these two things
was the cognitive dissonance you were talking about last week, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. Like, how do you keep both of these things in relationship and in community with one another? Here's another little, like, world according to Nathan, by the way, because I want to build like some philosophy around this.
Yeah,
because these philosophies that I live by apply to other domains, but I think if I can like preface some of my thoughts around change and change management with this little like package of philosophies, it can help me. I don't know. Maybe this just hasn't kicked in yet, but I'll be killing
just
it in like
wait,
10 minutes. So let me try to get this out a little bit. So back to this, right? This tension. I heard early in my development this idea of like a mixed bag, right? That you would have a mixed bag of people, this eclectic group of philosophies. And I think a lot of times when people are trying to create diversity in thought or in culture or in method, they think more like a medium, like, okay, a spectrum. So on one end of the extreme, you have this type of thinking. On the other end of the extreme, you have that type of thinking. And if we want to have a mix or a mixed bag, we'll just aim for the middle. In politics, this is where, you know, people are purple, right? Where it's like, well, I can't tell, are you blue, are you red, are you Democrat, are you Republican? It's like, I'm appealing to everyone, right? It kind of goes along what we were talking about with
the brand,
with the brand and the crossing the chasm and appealing to the, which I have I've been pondering that. Because I go back and, do you listen to the podcasts?
Yeah.
I do too.
Yeah.
I don't know if people think that's lame, but it's lame if you don't.
No, I do. Do it to like learn. And
I'm like
just say like, oh, cool, what could we have done better?
Right.
Like, because there's sometimes where I'll listen to it and I'm like, dang, we should have gone deeper there. Like,
We'll do a whole episode. Yeah, cool. So I was literally just listening to it this morning, and I got to thinking about it more, and finding that middle ground is, I believe, not actually a medium or an average or a middle. It's a mixed bag of extremes. So you have like a handful of this extreme and a handful of that extreme. And then in the bag, like a literal sack, a juia, you have these things, right? That you're like, oh, that's how we landed on this happy medium, because he's this way and she's that way and she's this way and he's that way. And now somewhere in the middle, we're finding this proper tension. Why do I say that? So in regard to change and change management, you do need to have a certain group of people that are like constantly ideating, that are like coming up with new ideas all the time. And then they're sort of tethered and balanced by people that are like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, And I think what will happen a lot of times, particularly in startup culture, is that you got like these young guns, and if you give them funding, it's like giving kids too much sugar or something. It's like this stimulant that they feel like they have to literally burn through. Like they're like, but what do you mean we have to do this and change it and try it again? And a lot of times they just miss the law of sowing and reaping.
Yeah.
Right? You plant seeds, then you cultivate, then you harvest.
Yep.
And this isn't like earth-shattering information, but it's always good to just like check in on this, because we live in a culture where things are just so immediate, right? And then we get spoiled. Like it is insane what AI can spit out to us in just seconds, right? Drive-through, fast food.
Like the fact that when you're on your streaming service, you no longer have to watch commercials. Like,
Right,
you don't have to wait through 3 minutes of commercials now.
And then even, back to, if you think, like sitcoms, you had to wait a whole week before you got the next episode.
Jamie
You couldn't just binge it.
hates that some of these like shows will come out one at a time. Yeah. She'll even wait until like the 12 weeks are over. She's like, we're waiting 3 months. We're not watching this shit one
Isn't
at
it
a time.
interesting how like everything comes back, right? Like, I think everything resurfaces. Fashion does this. And I had this experience recently. I'm like, I forget what we were watching exactly, but same thing. They were releasing it once a week. And then there's commercials. And I'm like, we're now paying to see it every week and get advertised to. I'm like, I thought this was the whole point.
I think it's like Peacock or something like that. Just like the commercials on Peacock. It's like, bro, I feel like I'm back in like 1998 watching NBC at 7 p.m.
And those commercials were better. These ones, I'm like, I didn't know I had these diseases. I need that medicine.
If you watch it, it's only alcohol and like you've got some sort of poop disease.
I also just want to send them a message and be like, look, I understand that demographically you think I'm losing my hair, but it's not not happening. So like, chill. My hair's getting thicker.
Yeah,
right?
dude,
you got the wrong guy.
No, dude, I'm losing this. Dude, every time I shower, bro, I'm like, no. I
think you just lost it.
Yeah. Dude, I'm going to only have this back rat tail.
Dude, I thought I was losing it. But it turned out it was just the lighting because we moved into a new house. Somebody told you this.
Dude.
But it was like I get out of the shower and the light. I'm like, wait, is that my... I didn't know I had a skull. I've never seen it. Like it's always covered by my hair.
Bro, dude.
So hopefully
I do it like through like this. These like, is it going further back? It's not. Thank God.
Good.
I talked to my barber. I was like, bro, am I losing my hair? He's like, no. When your hair gets to a certain length, you will just start like shedding a little. And I'm like, bro, I feel like you're lying to me.
So he might have let you down.
Yeah,
I asked the same thing. That's right. I was like, hey man, I feel like you'd shoot me straight. Like, because he did tell me when it was getting like, because the clump and it's gray, and I'm like, man, like I've watched it get grayer and grayer and grayer, over the years, but. He's like, you're not losing your hair, dude. You're fine. I was like, tip? Extra tip.
You get $100.
So what I'm getting at is you plant seeds, right? You cultivate, you harvest. And in a society where people haven't really been taught to cultivate.
Yeah, we live in a microwave society.
Right. Yeah. Boom, boom, boom. Now. I think what happens in that mindset is before it even takes hold, before it marinates, before it develops, they're on to the next planting of the seed, right? Yes. It's like, how do you build disciplines, mental and emotional disciplines? Because it's hard. I'm not claiming that it's not hard to do these things, to delay gratification, to see above the horizon. So I think it'd be worthwhile for our listeners and just even for us to talk out some of the like things one does during that time, because you can twiddle your thumbs, you can sit on your hands, like you could just try to let the passage of time occur, or there are things that you can do that are developmental, that are part of the process that can help like move it forward without changing it.
Yeah. What I've called it in the past is, and this is not a Ned statement. I actually think I got this from Hillman, sorry, but 98% of the things I say I got from Hillman.
I don't make any of this stuff.
But it's proactive patience is...
I've heard you say that before.
Yeah, and it's like... So what I love about that, what you're saying is... So what farmer plants, but he doesn't stop watering, he doesn't stop cultivating, he doesn't stop like aerating the ground around it. Right. It's the biggest thing right now, like with proactive patience, is the basic premise of it is you plant the seed and you do the things that grow that thing. You create the habits, you create the skill set, you create the tool set, the mindset to have the asset once you actually have that time. But what you see, what happens is people do end up prematurely changing the habit or changing the thing that would allow that to actually grow. And I've seen it firsthand where, you'll build this system and this process and this structure, And then day 3, it's not where it needs to be. So you go out and pull that plant out of the ground and say, no, this is dead. When in reality, if you had been proactively patient and said, hey, this is going to take 3 months for us to get any sort of information that is statistically significant. And it doesn't mean that you just sit there and go, hey, we're going to stay on this script. We're going to stay doing this thing. We're going to stop listening to customers. We're going to stop listening to our advisory board on things that need to change. But you get very strict on what are the iterations that happen here, because the outcome is what you care about, right? And so it's like, if I plant tomatoes, I need to know how to water them, how much sun they get. I need to know at 3 p.m. I need to change where it's getting the sunlight from. Hey, we watered it a little too much, or we watered it a little too less. Those are iterations. I think the problem with today's society and what I see in business is that people get to the place where they're like, and maybe this is because of, and what we've talked about in prior podcasts of, hey, I got $5 million. I'm expected to double our revenue this year minimum. And they start to think that movement equals momentum. And movement doesn't equal momentum unless you are moving in the direction of the outcome that you're looking to get. And the outcome can't just be the revenue. The outcome has to be, especially when you're building a team, there's an art and science to business. There's the scientific aspect of it that can live in spreadsheets and can live in, the scriptings and the playbooks and things like that. But there's the art side of it, whereas company morale, employee morale. If you mess with a salesperson's pay too many times, you mess with it one time and they're going to quit. You mess with it too many times and you've got a mutiny on your hands. Right. But it's even like when I look at tech companies, how many times do they change the roadmap because one person said one thing? And it's that volume versus volume principle. It's the amount that you've heard this change request versus how loud a subset of your people are. And so this sowing and reaping piece is such a crucial thing to think about, because it's like, dude, all right, we are going to start this business. This is what we're offering. Well, you've got to start going out to market. Right. Okay, 3 people told you no. That doesn't mean you completely pivot your organization. You have a couple of SDRs that aren't seeing success. Right. That doesn't mean you get rid of your SDR motion. Right? It means that, no, we need to water that a little bit more. We need to put more sunlight on it. We need to cultivate a little bit more. And so I think that's where people get it wrong.
That's good. That's a lot of nuggets in there, man. Yeah. I like that volume versus volume.
Volume versus volume is a huge thing that I've learned over my career, because it's really, really easy for people to get tied up in the people that are loud. And this is internal and external, right? You could have a very loud salesperson who is saying, we need this feature, or I can't sell this without it, when the other 80% of your people are selling and doing really well with the feature set that you have. The volume versus volume is super crucial. Don't listen to the loud, listen to the multitude.
I like that. That's good. Yeah, I think there's in that middle, the mundane middle, there's things you can do as a leader, I have found, that both act as the path forward and the passage of time.
Yeah.
Because there is a certain amount of time, right? Like the sun has to rise and set a certain amount of time for the corn to grow and harvest, or the wheat, or, if you look at it in nature. So businesses are no different in their development. And if you approach that mundane middle properly, one, you can keep your sanity, you can keep your dignity, because you don't lose your shit and show everyone that you're like chicken shit.
Yeah.
And some of the things that I think we do pretty well, and has been part of my method, is savoring the moment, really pondering the moment and then creating environments to literally just talk about it, like talk it out, So be reflective, like I will beat up and beat down and like press and pack and just like tenderize a topic to where it's, by the time it like comes out, it's wagyu, right? Like it's real tender, right? And I think a lot of times,
it can't be pork though.
No,
Definitely
we never.
can't be
Of
pork,
course
dude.
not. Obviously,
We are proudly pork free.
It's insane. So I feel like a lot of times if you're wise enough in the first place to know that like it's going to take some time,
Yeah.
well, you can't just ask.
But that is, you made it, if you're wise enough, it takes wisdom to understand that anything worth having takes time.
Right.
It's very, very easy for you to put up a course on school, get 100 people to pay you $100 a month, but there's no lasting thing to it, because how many of these gurus have you seen that jump from one thing to the next, and maybe they're still in like personal development, but now they've got a joint venture over here and they've got this over there, and there is no real lasting impact to what they're actually doing. So I think there is wisdom in understanding that, hey, sometimes life is a crock pot, it's not a microwave.
It's interesting you say that, because I heard a cool analogy, and I'll share it in this moment. So it was around being like a master chef, and in creating this meal and this experience for your diners or the people that are,
Yeah, I don't think master chefs live in diners.
Right.
Except
that are dining.
You're a diner.
The master. What did you say recently about the Waffle House? Like,
Yeah, dude.
like sweating on your food.
Dude, Waffle House is, to this day, my favorite restaurant, minus Golden Corral. I love me some Golden Corral.
It's a tough bout right there between those two.
Dude, there's a reason Trevor
So,
Lawrence went to Waffle
not the
House.
diners, but the patrons, the people that are, dining,
customers.
the fine dining experience that you're creating at Waffle House. You are going to have a mixed bag of vehicles. So you might have this roast that is marinating or has been in the crock pot all day or for the last 24 hours. Well, there's also going to be things that are on the stovetop that the water still has to boil and, it has to cook the pasta or whatever it may be. And then the oven might have something else. And yet, even though you're a master chef, there's still some things you might have to microwave, right? Like melt the butter quickly or whatever chefs do. So part of the way I keep my sanity in the process and going through the stages of growth and development is I compartmentalize that. Like I go like, okay, what are the things today, this week, this month, this quarter that are microwavable? Because there are some things that like just knock that shit out. Like get that done immediately.
Yeah.
Be done with it. Get a quick return on it. And it's not just like all revenue generating, right? It might be like, okay, each month I'm going to be like laser focused on reconciling the books from the month before. So a lot of business owners, and we know this just in the world we live in, they will put that off.
Yeah.
And then all at once they're trying to reconcile and account for like 12 months of transactions. Or they say, oh, I'll just do it like quarterly. But it's amazing. Like if you let even 2 months go by without talking to your bookkeeper, without talking to your accountant, you will forget. Like they'll be like, well, what is this transaction? You're like, shit. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, I went to the ATM. Like, why did I do that?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. You'll eventually figure it out. You're probably not going to get audited if you've
got another good enough accountant, you definitely won't.
Right. But there's just something in the ether, something in the laws of success. I heard it this way, and I latched onto it, that God is a God of order. And if you're of the belief that you want your business to be blessed, you want your business to grow. I believe that business and leadership and the combination thereof is really all an exercise in stewardship and capacity. It's like you get what you can handle in this life. You know, you get what you've built capacity for, not what you want, not what you desire. You get what you've prepared for.
Yeah.
So in like managing change and
well, before you get into that, I think with the Master Chef idea there, it's super important to understand that the Master Chef that microwaves the butter, it is the reason that he's able to do that quickly is because it's still, that butter is still going into the dish that is being served, right? The Master Chef isn't just like microwaving this dish and crock potting this dish and adding garnish to this dish. All of that comes into one cohesive final product.
Right.
That, and if you've ever eaten at a fine dining establishment, it takes a while for your food to get out there. Right? And it is because there is careful consideration of every single step that goes into that process. And I think where a lot of individuals and a lot of businesses have really started to screw up when it comes to change and iteration is I think they use change and iteration synonymously when they're not, right? And change, I think, is something where you are now getting off of you're getting off the train, in my opinion. Iteration is, hey, I'm going to go try a different seat on this train.
Right. Course, it's
course
navigation,
correction.
it's course correction. Change is like starts and stops.
Yes.
And maybe if we, stop at this train station and change this, and it's like you're never getting momentum because you're constantly starting and stopping.
And I've been in organizations where it literally is you have one bad month, quote unquote, right? And it's not even a bad month in terms of like, hey, you might have hit numbers, but you didn't necessarily get to that like BHAG, right? And now it's, we have to change this workflow. We have to change who gets these leads. We have to change what our product looks like. And the problem with change is that when you get off on a completely different, and you try to get on a completely different train, you get off at the train stop, is you lose sight of the things that were actually moving you forward inside of that.
Yeah, I like how you sort of start with the way you frame that is starting with the end in mind. Like if you
always,
can, right? Yeah, if you can imagine the final dish, the delivery of this gourmet meal and what that's going to be like for all your stakeholders, because you're not just serving the client, but you're serving the employee, you're serving the community, you're serving the shareholders, you're serving everyone. Like our mission, right? To be the world's most people-centric company. It includes and considers all the people, all the constituents. So assuming you've got like good thinking around that, right? And you want to serve well, I like the verse in the Bible that says service to many leads to greatness, right? Yep. So if you want to be great, like find a way to serve the many, to serve the masses. So under that context, under that school of thought, now you start to break it down to what it takes to get those ingredients compiled properly. And then the timing, this is one of the things that I just absolutely hate about cooking. Like I like cooking up businesses, but I don't like cooking up food because I can never get the timing right. Like it just stresses me out. Like, and the ingredients are everywhere. But if you can be masterful in that way and be like a master chef, then there is like a faith element, a patience element, because you're going like, okay, that roast is chilling. I got to let that train keep moving down the track. I got to keep moving it and grooving it. Does that mean that you never check on it? No. Does that mean that you don't test the sauce and go, Oh, I think it needs a little more salt, a little more sugar, a little more pepper, a little more whatever's in good sauce, a little more garlic. So you're still constantly checking in and checking on, but you will absolutely exhaust your people through change
that's
fatigue.
The key, bro.
And I think we should talk about change fatigue because interestingly enough, and I trust God in this because there's just like a perfect timing. And you might not even know this actually. So I'm a catalyst for change. I'm somebody that is constantly looking for the betterment. And part of the way that I built my core is I've kept it small enough, like nimble enough, put better, agile enough so that we could like bob and weave and sort of pivot around like, oh, that's kind of an iceberg. Like let's go around that. Or not even so much an iceberg, like something that would kill us, but just like a roadblock. Like that would harm us later if you add 1,000 units to it, clients, people, whatever.
But what you've done really well is you've always had the end in mind, right? And the end in mind has always been at the forefront of, and that allows you to see the iceberg.
And you know what the irony is, man? This is a nugget too. The end is that there is no end.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like the end in mind that I've always sort of kept at the forefront of everybody's mind is that like, hey, we're never going to stop doing this. Like I want the day that you die, you're at my core. Like we all come to your funeral because we love you, and that's an infinite game. I'm a big Simon Sinek fan, and he talks in his book, The Infinite Game, a lot about this. But it's just this idea or this method or like this way in which you can build capacity for the proper change without, to your point, change for the sake of change.
Yeah.
So I made a bunch of changes like prior to a season right before you came on board.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I didn't know why, but I just had this like sense, this like horse sense that I'm going to like chill for a bit. Which what happened in that season is everyone like rehabilitated, right? It's almost like working out, right? Like we tore the muscles down and then they built themselves back up in that like active recovery. Like we kept operating the business and doing our thing. But for the prior, it's relative, but it was probably like 3 or 4 months before you came on board. I really didn't implement very many changes. Yeah. I let it like take shape. I let it, marinate. And that built two things happening at once. This is what I mean by the mixed bag or the tension between the two. Because if this whole time we had never changed, like we just weren't a changeful, dynamic, agile organization, we would have lost our mind when a Ned Eric came on board because we'd have been like, oh my God, like, what do you mean, young man? Like versus like, sure. Because I built in their psyche, myself included, in our culture, like in our way, like, yeah, let's bust that down. Let's fix that. Let's make it better. Like, let's imagine what it looks like 5 years down the road. So we have this culture of embracing change and betterment and improvement, but the timing matters as well. So you got to pick like your battles. And as a leader, if you have a vision for like this version and you do it prematurely, well, people are going to taste that. They're going to go, this isn't a Dante. This is just raw. Like this is just hard noodles. Yeah. Or they're going to go, this is mushy because you waited too long to change it. So I don't have exact answers to this. No. It's just there's like this gut analytics meets measuring what matters that is this sort of tough discernment process. But I just would say for people listening, and I don't know if we're even helpful at this point, but it's like prepare for change by both creating an environment of change and then rehabbing any changes you made before you make the next big change. So the spaced repetition.
That's the key, what you just said, is you have to finish one thing before you enter into a new thing. And I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong, because it's like, and I've seen this happen, and I've made this mistake before, just even being a revenue leader, where you're like, hey, we're going to update our, who we're going after. Let's just say it's that, right? Our customer profile. We're going to go from this customer to, hey, I think we actually have a better fit over here. And what happens is, a lot of times, and actually, no, I'll use this analogy, I'll use a real life example. Jamie worked for a company.
I was like, this is a very specific analogy.
Yeah.
Very detailed analogy.
Jamie worked for this one company. And it was e-commerce, and they were selling, $1,500 to $5,000 packages like a month, right? Okay. And this guy hired a consultant, her boss hired this consultant, and this guy goes, you could easily get $100,000 for this product a month or whatever, $100,000 package, whatever it was. And so this guy comes in, does the audit, and the CEO comes in and goes, stop selling the $1,500. We only sell $100,000 packages now. And number one, you're literally, the amount of change, the greatness of that change is too much. The magnitude is too much for someone to handle. But in that change, that is now a new customer profile. That is a new sales cycle. That is a new length in time. Sales velocity goes down. Scripting, all of it changes. Your business model changes in all those. So now you've got 5 changes that you need to do at once. Yeah. And some may argue that, okay, cool, going up market. But what I've seen in change in my career is change has to happen incrementally. Yeah. And it's like, it has to have that end in mind of like, this is what the product looks like. This is what goes out the door as the chef. This is where we end, right? But it has to happen in small bits, and one change, then the next change, then the next change, and everything has to be fully baked.
And it has to be connected, right? Like through line.
Yes, there has to be a through line through it. Because if it feels fragmented,
well, you'll lose. I mean, you could dangle whatever influence you have from the paycheck that you provide, from the position.
That's just positional leadership.
Exactly. That's level one. Positional leadership. And that will get you about nowhere fast. So, I don't know if maybe it's the athletes in us, but typically in our conversations, in our episodes, I feel like we end up drawing this like blank v blank, like this versus that.
Yeah.
And I think what we're talking about here sort of is like change versus evolution.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, the way you describe
that's the name of the episode, Kenya, right. Change versus evolution.
Right. So it's like we're calling this, up to this point in the conversation, we've been calling this all change. Yeah. But the reality of it is, as you mentioned, the aforementioned was really a progression and an evolution of a thing. And I always like to look back or look to, because it's not really back, like real time. If you came in and said, oh, guys, you're doing this way wrong, or this is like way off.
Yeah.
Been like, fuck off, right? like at some point that conversation would have had to happen. And we have not had any of that conversation because you've recognized that, hey, there is a core offering, a core value for profit share, a core value for market share. And I think we can level this up. I think that we can evolve it into this scope of work, into this level of value at this price point. And hey, if it's 3 times the price, you need a lot less clients to get to the same place, right? I like to say if it's half the price, you need twice the clients. If it's twice the price, you need half the clients. I'd prefer to double the price and double the clients, right? But the point being is that I think business owners, founders, people listening need to take inventory of their businesses, of their careers. And, not everyone is building a business from scratch. So let's just say you're in sales. Well, look backwards and go, why did I have such a good quarter last year at this time? And why? And then the temptation warning will be, well, the tariffs. If I hear people talk about tariffs.
Dude, this week I had 3 separate hour-long plus conversations about tariffs, dude.
I don't it's always
I don't even
something.
understand them, bro.
I don't even know what a tariff. The first time I heard it, I was like, the terrorists? They're back? I never forget. I know exactly where I was the day the tariffs attacked.
Miss Molina's 4th grade class.
Right. I was in 8th grade gym class when the tariffs hit the fucking towers. Sorry, I don't know if that's funny. I think it's funny.
I do.
So anyway,
we can say it because we're from Maryland and it happened very close to us. We're allowed to.
The
Sorry.
Pentagon and
Yeah.
anyway, the war on
Tariffism.
So stupid. Yes, Al Qaeda. So my legs cramping up. Anyway, any excuse will do, right? But if you look back to your heyday, your sweet spot, your moment in time, stop dusting off that trophy, number one. But do look back and go like, who was I talking to? Oh, yeah, I had built that partnership and they were referring me. Or I was going to that networking event, or I was out kissing hands and shaking babies, or like I was just locked in and freaking cold calling and I did 100 dials a day. There is going to be a pretty clear cause and effect.
Yeah.
A pretty clear plant, seed, cultivate, harvest. And I think so many people are like stuck right now, like mentally and emotionally stuck.
Yeah.
And like get unstuck. And the best way to do that, and we have a course in the academy by Tony, our COO. Just do it. As our boy Shia LaBeouf says it, like just do it, right? So you do have to get into motion and into action and still somehow map out, think out, plot out the progression, the evolution. So I'm liking this conversation because it's like every few sentences I'm like struggling with, but change is good, but change is bad. But wait, you don't want to change, but like you have to change. And that tension could be drawn as in like change and evolution are not the same
They're not the same thing. Yeah, because evolution keeps the core the same.
Right.
Change changes the core of it. And I experienced this personally from in business from just the aspect of it's very, very easy to mistake the two. It's very easy. And if we think of it like we saw in our was that biology or history where we learned about
Well, it's
evolution?
funny. I just have to insert this because I grew up in a Christian home, like where we were homeschooled and kind of like off the grid.
So you never heard about Darwin.
Well, right. So like the word evolution is almost as bad as the word Harry Potter. so like I can remember
Evolution and witches and Warcraft.
seriously, like anytime I heard evolution, I was like, I don't believe in that. It's like, I actually don't. From like a Darwinism standpoint, I do believe in creation and not the Big Bang, just for the record. However, I do believe that after the thing you created, it evolves. I've created children with Jen, and I've watched them evolve and grow and change. So both of these things happen, but it is just, I just had to insert that.
It's very easy to misinterpret what you're doing in business as evolution. Hey, we are going to add this new product line. We're going to add this new feature because we are evolving as a company. And I think
that's interesting, the flip side, right? Because it's two sides of the same coin, right?
Yeah.
You got to have a lot of discernment here and discretion. You could be like, no, it's not change, it's evolution. Or no, it's not evolution, it's change. And sometimes you trick yourself into be like, we are evolving per our strategy. It's like, no, you're just changing shit because you're bored.
Because you're bored.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, because I've seen this in very high level organizations where we're going to add this product line because this product line over here that has been making us money has gone stagnant. And it's like, no, you need to evolve that product line.
Right.
You don't need to go and take
people off of your revenue generating piece and then say, hey, no. Now you need to learn this new thing. And I think that's where, because a lot of times I hear this, and I heard this in consulting all the time, where they were like, we've hit the ceiling.
Right.
And I'm like,
ceiling.
Hold up.
Bro,
Hold up.
there's
You
no
sell
ceiling, yeah.
you sell what? Hold up. You're in IBM's market?
Right.
You definitely are. You as big as IBM? Because you haven't hit the ceiling.
Oh, you're a CRM and you've hit the ceiling? Salesforce? Right. There's a fucking tower named after them. Bro, you guys did $2.5 million last year. You haven't hit the ceiling. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be evolving your feature set.
Right.
But it means that you don't need to go, and if you are a sales CRM, it doesn't mean that you need to do a marketing product now. And it doesn't mean that you need to do customer success and try to be HubSpot. It means that you need to evolve your product, and it could be a mindset, it could be a skill set, it could be an actual tool set thing that you're building in there. But I think that's where I see the difference between change and evolution. And that's why change management is so hard. Obviously, my company was acquired. We had to go and merge multiple companies together. And that is a very, very hard thing to do.
It almost never works.
Dude, it was
How's that going for you?
Dude, it was so bad. Because, dude, I mean, I've never been like taught on change management. I think actually I did take a class in grad school on change management. I don't remember. Yeah, sure. But I remember reading about it. But it's all this like theory and like how to do it and all these things. And it just never
like
works.
anything, then add people.
Yeah, exactly. It was just like
I want to speak to this. You get me fired up because I think there's a little bit of a I don't know, an antidote here to this that I have found. And, I don't know, maybe just it's my blanket answer to everything. But when in doubt,
to Nathan.
World according to Nathan. When in doubt, lead with who. So here's what I've found in people and in the human condition and in leadership and team building and people power and all of the above. What's being a UX UI, a code, a product, a feature set, they are finite games.
Yeah.
Like there is sort of an end, like in the energy to it. So then what happens is if you're leading with what, you get to sort of the end, like you round third base, you're landing the plane on the platform, and it does like most everything that you wanted it to do. Like the core offering is there. And then, you could go down that path or down that rabbit hole. But then what I've watched happen, because we interface and partner with so many of these tech companies, I will watch them change things, and it is so clear that it is just for the sake of justifying their existence.
Yeah.
And you're like, the button was fine. It was fine on the left. It doesn't need to be on the right. Why did you put it up in the top? Like there's no rhyme or reason other than every day that person has to wake up and do a thing to justify their job, to get their paycheck, to stay on the payroll, to stay at the company. And they just create these projects within projects that really aren't continuous, however you say it. There's not continuity. There's not continuity to it. And
a lot of those people make that change, and they make it more difficult for it to be used by people because now they feel needed in that process because I have to go to you to then go and
that's
be like,
a whole
how do I do that?
The dependency that people will build in. Right. So here's what I think is the answer to that, or the antidote. You have to base your day in people, specifically like community. So for example, if the lion's share, like the majority, the primary focus of your day as a human being in business, in the market, in this life, really, you could apply this to any area, is people-based. You are now naturally on an infinite path. You are playing an infinite game. You're never going to get to the bottom. It's a black hole, bottomless pit of people for example, like if you think of an algorithm, so if you're building tech and there's an algorithm, that algorithm's not going to change when you log back in the next day to Python or whatever you're building on. People, their algorithm changes by the hour.
Yeah.
It depends on whether they slept last night. They just got a concerning text. They're in a fight with their significant other. They had or did not have lunch. They're full of caffeine or not full of caffeine. So most people don't want to play that game because it's so dynamic, it's so changeful, it's so unpredictable because it's people. But here's where you create this sort of like path or like way forward when you're people based in the majority of what you do. You got to do shit too, right? You got to cross T's, dot I's, write the code, file it away. Like, yes, there's absolutely time where it's just like you and the computer, or you and the copy, or you and ChatGPT, that you're just working this thing out. Well, if you start to take that work and build community around it, kind of back to what I said earlier, like let's just say you're 3 developers and you're the ones that are developing all the things. Well, somebody that's leading you, could be one of the 3 or the leader, needs to build these like mastermind opportunities where it's like, stop doing that thing and let's just talk about it. And stop doing that thing and let's just talk about it. And stop doing that thing. And I think the natural thought is, oh yeah, because then you get to build it faster or better or stronger. It's like, actually, no. It's to slow it down a little bit, to just start thinking in depth instead of in width all the time. And I think that if we as leaders and as literal people, like humans, start working more in depth and try to find the wisdom, the ancient wisdom, the like, what path here would make me even more human? Like how would I have to feel about this? What's like the spiritual component to this? And that's, it might sound a little like esoteric or like, ooh, like hoo-hooey or weird. It's the way, man. It's the way you curb the temptation and really like drug addiction to change.
Yeah, because because you get a dopamine hit, right?
Totally.
Which is it's a very addictive drug. What I'm hearing you say there,
Yeah, I'm trying. Like, help me get it out.
Yeah, and maybe I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing is that change needs to be rooted in clarity, in accountability with the community, and in alignment with the end goal. So, like, if you're creating this, it's like, okay, if I just tell you to write this line of code, right? And actually, I'll go to something that I've always done in my career. I've always led by understanding and matching the individual with the company's end goal. So if I'm sitting down for a one-on-one with a direct report, I want to understand their why, and then I want to understand how what they're doing aligns to the company's end goal, which is the clarity. But I'm taking the clarity of the organization and putting it with that individual. Hey, if you go out and make 100 dials a day and you book 5 meetings a week, hey, guess what? That's going to allow us to close X amount of deals, which is going to be X percentage to the company goal. Congratulations, you're a killer. You're awesome. So there's clarity in that. The accountability piece comes in that community. And in my career, it's been the revenue teams the marketing team, right? But, in marketing specifically, you've got your content team, right? You may have your brand team. You may have your, copy team. And so there's all these separate communities, but I always would bring them together to then crowdsource from one another, right? So you have this clarity of how this thing that I'm asking you to do aligns with the company goal. You have the accountability of everyone in your organization and the crowdsourcing of ideas. And the alignment is that thread that is because you've built a great brand, because you built a great culture, episode 4 or 5 and episode 1, because you've built those things. Now this thread all the way through, you're always making sure that you are on that thread with the change. And you know why that change is happening. You know how it helps you get to the end goal. And now you as a community or
through accountability, you now know who is in charge of what. It's this like making sure that you have, when you do create change, it's having an owner of the change, having a definition of done, and having those milestones along the way, but always coming back to crowdsourcing. Always coming back. I always will say, like, if something's going to take us 3 months, I always will have milestones, and anytime we've reached a milestone or are getting closer to that milestone, I bring people together and say, hey, here's where we are, and I say, okay, cool. Are we still on the thread? Are we still in alignment with what this change needs to get done? Because if you don't create change with the end goal in mind and the definition of done, you will perpetually try to change and perpetually try to iterate that thing.
That's good, man. That's good. I need to get my notebook to give in a clinic. Yeah, so much good.
Because I think that is like, dude, that like what you were just saying, and kind of like what I just brain dumped all over the podcast here, is like,
I like it.
If you want to make a change, that's fine, right? That's cool. But there needs to be clarity in the change. There needs to be accountability in the change, and there needs to be alignment with the end goal.
And here's some quick how-tos, and then I want to respond to that a little bit. And I think you and I are a good we complement each other well in this regard.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not possible for a single person to like embody all of this. Do what you got to do until you find somebody or develop somebody that can do one of the two parts, be it like visionary integrator type. So this is so basic, and I think oftentimes people skip and they don't get that it is a 3-part system. So as a wrestler, I like to look at the sport, and I think this applies to all martial arts, in 3 stages: setup, execute, finish. And what happens is in wrestling, there's something called chain wrestling, where you connect all the moves. And if you are watching and you're not a top tier grappler, you would think that something happened all at once. You know, it'd be like, oh, look, that person took that person down. But if you were to like literally record it, film it, rewind it, and like stop it, you could literally say, see this is setup, this is execution, and this is finish. And you can learn to break down the sport. So when I teach high school kids, this is one of the things that I've had feedback from people be like, that blew my mind. Like, I never really put that together. And then what I would do is I will train them on all their setups, which is like crucial. And then their executions, and then their finish. And what happens is people will learn the execution, but they don't do the setup and then wonder why. And they don't do the finish and then wonder why. And they're just plowing through on the execution, right? Just being like, I'm trying to muscle it, like literally in wrestling, right? Like they're like, it's me, and then I'm just trying to. It's like, dude, you didn't do the elbow pass, you know, you didn't level change, you didn't, you know, like switch your hips, whatever the whole thing is. So what happens is that's like V1 of mastery, right? Is that you even get that, whether you know it or not. And great wrestlers, as I have this conversation, they're like, oh, that's what I do. And it's like, yeah, man, it's phenomenally. But then the next piece is that you're always setting up the setup. So when I'm finishing, I'm setting up the setup in my finish, right? So you're like, oh, shit, like he's getting the points, like he's converting the move, but he's already in the future. It's chess, right? I mean, you're playing chess at that point and saying like, well, I was setting up the next thing I'm about to do to your body.
Yeah, it's like you're sitting there already before you do the thing. Yeah. You know that once you hit the finish, you're already starting the setup for the next thing.
Right.
Which is business, bro.
Which is business and life and Game of Thrones and all the things. So put differently, tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell them, and tell them what you told them. So in change management, I have found if I am setting up the setup and I'm telling, like right now, I have been telling the team some shit. And it's like, oh, and by the time the penny drops, it's like, I like that idea. And I'm like, well, good, because I've been telling you for 3 weeks about it.
But I think the cool thing is, too, is like, as you talk about setup, execute, finish, and I, went into like the clarity, accountability, alignment piece.
It's really kind of the same.
It's
it's like they stack, right? Because you have to have clarity, accountability, and alignment on the setup. Because if you do the wrong setup for the right finish, right, now we're not in alignment anymore, right? If I don't have accountability on the execution and I don't have coaching and I don't have iteration within that, then there's no way I'm ever going to get to the finish. And now I'm out of alignment.
And people wonder why they don't get buy-in. Like,
yeah,
you got to load the deck. So what people don't realize is that
leadership lesson incoming, right? Dude, this is huge.
This is.
I think I know what you're about to say. So
good shit. This is like how I do my. This is like these are my secrets. Like good shit. But here's what happens: high level people, they love it. They love it when you're doing it. They're like, I see you. Like they'll let you do it. It's like wrestling with a great wrestler. You're like, now see what you did there. So here's the thought there. I'm trying to get my shoes to look cool, and this thing's in the way. Damn it! Yeah, there we go. So, loading the deck, loading the audience. You are placing an ace that knows the punchline, and you're not programming or manipulating. You genuinely invested the time to have conversations about this change prior to the announcement, prior to the day you drew the line.
Yeah.
Now in an audience of maybe it's your leadership team of 5, 10, maybe it's the whole company, all hands, and it's 50 or 500. It's all relative. But you better have planted in the audience people that aren't yes men or yes women, but that have already beat it up with you and like wrestled over it, wrestled over it, and you landed on like agree to disagree, or I see kind of what you're doing, but I don't know, man, but I got your back. So that it takes, because people look to the leaders. Like they literally look at them and go, how did he just respond to what he just said? Mm-hmm. And you never let them see you sweat. Like you deal with that shit off.
What is it like? It's like what, bleed in practice so you don't bleed in war, whatever it is, that statement.
Right.
Like, sweat.
So that's a little bit like tactical there, in the sense that in the setup, in the tell them what you're going to tell them, you have to have key players that are bought in for two reasons. One, you want it to take,
well, I would even
and they
argue,
actually are going to do the work.
Yeah,
like,
I would argue
you need their actual
too,
buy-in.
That like you have to. It's important that you get their buy-in, but it's also just as important that you listen to their critiques.
Totally.
And it's also just as important that you go, oh, cool, we aren't going to be able to move forward with this thing. Like, it is so much better to scrap a change prematurely before it's been brought to an organization than you bring it to an organization and the 3 people you should have gotten buy-in from point out all of its flaws because they have boots on the ground. I used to tell people all the time, like, hey, I need you to come to me with the issues that are going on because you are boots on the ground. Yep. I can see it from up here and I can go, oh, that looks a little scary.
Yep.
But like, I think it's important that when you're getting those people, you said it, do not surround yourself with yes men. No. You need to surround yourself with people during the setup that are going to tell you, hey, dude, no, not a chance. Or, hey, this is good, but we need to tweak A, B, and C if we're going to bring this.
Yeah, and maybe to even like crystallize that further, I think a lot of times people want an idea, a change, to be fully baked before it even is like implemented.
Yeah.
And that's just not realistic. What I do think is realistic is that it's half baked. So you got to get it to like about halfway there. And to your point, those key people who will, in that first 50% of the model, the idea, the shift, the change, the pivot, whatever it may be, the evolution, they need to be the ones that are changing it in that first 50%, that journey to half baked before you like then course correct it and like a torpedo, correct it on the way to its target. It's the exact same thing we talked about in our last episode, just 100%. Internally, right? Yeah. So it's like, okay, you're innovating this idea, also known as change.
Yeah.
Who are your early adopters within the organization that are going to cross the chasm with you to get the rest of the organization that is like, not hip to it yet.
Probably late majority. Most organizations are built with late majority people.
Right.
Like, and I would say, like, just from the perspective of, because like you said, the only constant in life is change.
Right.
Right. This is not an episode on like never change. It is.
It's manage it well.
It is how do, yeah, exactly. How do you manage it well? And it comes from you make sure that you set up so that the execution isn't broken, because that's where change screws up. Like you talked, when Beam was acquired, there was no setup, bro. It literally was ink dried, welcome. Right. Like, and it was, now you're taking these three different.
And by the way, some of that, let me ask you, because I've never been in that environment. I have one comparable, and this was a leadership lesson I learned the hard way, where I had a version of MyCore for 2 years prior to the now MyCore Incorporated. So from 2016 into 2018, I had like a group of people, and we were doing what we were doing in the employee benefits space, right? Yeah. Which is still part of what we do, but it's obviously evolved, changed a great deal from that. And I kept a bunch of people in the dark. I broke my own rule. I didn't set up the setup. I didn't tell them what I was going to tell them. I just told them. Yeah. And then kind of for a moment went, what do you mean, guys? It's awesome, And I learned the hard way at 29 years old, like, I'll never do that again, because I lost great people, both emotionally and then like ultimately lost them. Yeah. Now, the rest of the story, they actually power our whole benefits team now. So, that was kind of a cool.
But that's just because you're Nathan Bourne.
Yeah.
But for real.
I was trying to think of something humble. I couldn't. Nothing came
he's like, he tried to be humble and couldn't be. Like, you're like, yeah, you're right, Ned. You're like, yeah, congrats. You're like,
you're rubbing off on me.
Yeah. Anyone, if you ever compliment me, I will literally be like, yeah, you're right.
Like, I'm glad you finally figured it out.
Yeah, you're late to the game, brother.
Yeah. Like, that's what I've been telling you.
That's the whole setup. Now we're in the execution.
Right. It's like, you're awesome. Like, I know, right? Yeah. It's about time you figured it out. So anyway, the point there being that that was my only experience with like major change management. Yeah. And I didn't have like an investor or an NDA or like these like deals going down where I couldn't disclose. I'm curious to ask you, in those situations, like, is the construct of it that you really kind of can't set up the setup because the deal's inked before you tell people, or like me, did you kind of screw it up?
I mean, everyone knew that the acquisition was happening.
Okay. So you could have been giving them details.
Where we really, really screwed up, big time, is so everyone knew we were getting acquired. Yep. But the minute we got acquired, we started changing.
I see.
And I think that's what I see in a lot of organizations, is that the minute that they decide that the change is going to happen, they just change it. They just go, boom. Right. Hey, guys, we're doing this thing. And everyone's like, oh, dude, and here's the thing. As human beings, right, it's like we are so comfortable in our comfort zone. And people don't like change. So like when I'm doing the thing and the thing is working and the train is going down the tracks and we're rolling and, Alex and Ned come to us and say we're getting acquired. Cool, whatever, dude. I'm still moving. I'm using the same tech. I'm doing the same things. I'm selling the same thing. I'm doing it, selling to the same people. And then all of a sudden, boom. Hey, we're going to merge HubSpots. Well, they don't have the same life cycle stages. They don't use the same lead statuses. Their workflows are different. The way that they route things is different. Okay, now I've hit a wall as a human being. Right. Now, where we could have gone well or done better is the setup. Hey, no, dude, keep doing what you're doing. Hey, we're going to do one thing at a time. Yep. Hey, we're going to do this, and we're going to set up, execute, and finish this. Then we're going to set up, execute, and finish this. And so I think that's where we lost 80% of our employees.
Well, that's a clue, right? I mean, if you're wondering, like, how'd it go? Yeah. That way.
They went, dude, 80% of,
and it is
salespeople
avoidable.
and our actual life.
And I'm thankful that you have those scars because you're able to learn from that and then not bring too much of that here, right? Yeah. And then like same thing, I don't have, it's funny too, because what'll happen is people will be like, your business won't, you're going to have to fail 7 times. I think I saw something with Alex Hormozy, like I had 9 businesses before I succeeded. And I don't disagree with that, but I actually so much agree with it that I could say, oh yeah, we've failed like every year for 7 years. We failed every year for 9 years. Like my core 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0 was like failure. Yeah. We stayed alive, obviously. Like we figured it out and stayed in business.
Yeah.
But in a way, like failing forward really is the only path.
Yeah.
And something that you said a moment ago triggered this thought, and I think it's really important not to forget. So I like to look at like the physical world for metaphor or analogy into the intangibles of leadership and people operations and these things that we talk about regularly that are pretty high level, pretty deep. So here's the thing. If you were to go to a construction site, whether it's residential or commercial, there's always going to be a dumpster, right? Like there's an entire business of the people that like deliver the dumpster and they throw all the shingles.
We've got a really good family friend who makes a ton of money doing that.
I mean, probably
dropping
in
and
your
picking
previous
up
business, right? Yeah, and then they're throwing the shingles in and the nails and the beams and then they haul it away. There's also oftentimes a porta potty, right? Because, well, people got to use the bathroom, right? So it's interesting that in that setting of construction and change, we of course put a big bin for all the waste, put a porta potty for all the waste. And then when we're changing systems, processes, personnel, we don't think about a waste management system. We don't think about a ventilation system. And I'll put it like crudely. People need to talk shit. It's part of the human condition to talk shit. So I always say to the team, I say, look, get it out. Go talk shit. But don't be a savage. Do it behind my back. That's where I talk badly about you. Come on, you think I'm going to say it to your face? What am I, an animal?
Oh, yeah. Dude,
no, I only talk about you guys
killer.
Psycho. I talk shit about you behind your back.
Like a real human being.
Right.
Bro.
Like, go
like a
gossip.
good friend.
Right. Like, talk shit, gossip. So part of building a healthy culture is creating a system, literally a system and a culture for properly getting it out. And you might think like, oh yeah, you got to spar, you got to vent. Yeah, but like you guys go talk about your issues with me. Mm-hmm. I don't want to hear it unless something comes out that's like glaringly like a concern where it's like an ethical issue or I've like lost my way.
Yeah.
Then just go get it out. And I think a lot of times culturally, particularly in the developed world and in this very like first world problem business construct, you're like, well, I don't want to be the one to talk poorly about them or say this thing because what if it comes back in HR and a complaint? And it's like, you're going to do it anyway. So why don't you do it constructively instead of destructively and create literal conversations to be like, hey, that was kind of crazy, right? Like, what are your thoughts on that? And it's like, I don't think I would have done it differently. I think it was a little bit abrasive, maybe. And all you're doing is just letting them get it out.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't even know this, but like I purposely created conversations about you coming to the organization that were just healthy enough, but like a little bit on the like, I don't know, like, are you wise? Is he going to be the right? And I am convinced that creating those conversations is what created such a, I mean, it's you did it ultimately, but like, I think it's part of the embrace because I knew it was, I'm like, this guy's going to be it's going to go wonderfully well. He's going to fuck my shit up. And I got to like do my darndest, my bestest of chance to make this. So I really did do some of that actually.
Interesting. So it's funny.
Before they met you, like,
and now now they just all talk shit about me. So like, it's all good.
They love you.
But it's interesting. When you made that dumpster analogy, I actually thought about it completely differently.
Oh, cool. Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Fuck you too. Yeah, I realized I completely disagree with you.
I thought about it, and I thought what you said was dumb. So I'm going to say
if we started to like stand up every time we one up each other, we'd be like The end of the
I'm just like hanging from the rafters like right now. I'm just like, what's up, Nathan?
Did you ever, dude? I gotta digress for a second. Did you ever see the Keen and Peele where they are?
Bitch.
That's what I was just thinking. Of. He's like, oh, you said it.
Oh,
He's
you
like,
said bitch?
yeah.
Oh,
Like
yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, bitch. They're like in the
I'm
tree.
about to get into space right now. I'm gonna be like,
And it's like, so I was like, that's okay. If you don't know it, Google it.
it's
Keen and
hilarious.
Peele.
Dude. I think it was the first skit of their first episode. I think that's like the one, and it was epic. Key and
It's
Peele's a
so
great
funny. He's
show,
like, you
dude.
said it. He's like,
You
yeah,
said it?
I said. it. I was like,
I said. He just looks for his wife. Like,
anyway. So yeah.
so
One up me. Come on.
yeah, dude. Here we go. This is the smartest thing I'll say all day. No,
Because
but
we should probably conclude.
yeah, you have a podcast. And
Yeah, I know.
another one.
Yeah.
The one that's
I'm not even
more-
changing anymore. I used to bring different shirts.
You're like,
Whatever,
nah,
dude.
dude.
I'll be wearing the same outfit for both of them.
I thought about the dumpster at a construction site as the waste and the extra. And it is the aspects of when you are changing, when you are renovating a home, there are things that you pull out of the current home that need to go into the dumpster that don't need to be there anymore.
The debris.
But there are also things that you've brought to the table, and maybe it is in excess of tarp that you just cut off and you throw it in the dumpster. And the thing is, when you think about change, it's like when you get into these settings and this accountability piece and you get into the execution piece, I think a lot of people think that everything you bring to the table needs to be inside of that change, when in reality, it's okay to have excess and it's okay to have things that don't make it to the finish.
Yeah, that's good.
And that is where, when you said that dumpster thing, I literally just like, because I've sat at those work sites not doing anything.
Right.
You want to know a funny story here? This is one of our first installs ever. It was an HVAC and solar install.
Beam?
This is with Beam. And Carlos was our head of installs, and I walk up and, I've got my Vans and skinny jeans.
Do you have a hard hat on? No. I would have gotten the biggest, best, like a hot pink hard hat.
Just, bro, I like pull up to
T-Mobile
this.
hard hat.
Just look the part.
It's like, hey guys.
But dude, all these guys, I mean, these are the most blue collar folks that you
just
can
rough and
experience.
tough.
Like we had a guy, Noah, who literally, bro, like he didn't have a bank account. He just used Cash App because he had so many baby mamas. And hopefully no one's listening to this that you don't know his last name.
Right. Exactly.
Whatever. But just the most blue collar guys. And I walk up and they're like, "What's up, boss?" I'm like, "Dude, you guys are doing great." I'm like looking around and I see the HVAC that's just sitting there. And I'm like, "Fellas, looks good. That new HVAC looks great." And Carlos looks at me and goes, "You dumb motherfucker. That's the old one." I was like, carry on.
Like,
I was like,
as
you were, peasants. Like,
dude. So you pointed to the old one.
I just was like, dude, you guys are gonna crush that. And he's just like,
that's
"You
great.
dumb motherfucker." But
that's
what I'm
awesome.
saying around that is, I think that is a really good analogy for change, because so often, number one, so many people bring too many cooks into the kitchen for their change management conversations. Like, you don't need everyone, and everyone hates that guy that at the end of the conversation goes, "Oh, but one more thing. It's like, dude, shut up, bro.
Right.
But it doesn't need to be everything from, like, the setup is so important to know what to bring into the execution phase. But you also have to understand that parts of the execution phase to get to the finish need to be cut off too.
Yeah.
If I were to go and have that extra tarp
I
on
like
that,
that.
it's like, now that the roof looks shitty, right?
Right.
Like at our house, we just got Jamie would know the word because she's smarter than I am and more of a man than I am. But like,
because she's the man of the house.
we got something done with our gutters that had to get changed. And like, dude, the guy literally put 30% of it back into his truck. Right? And it's just like, it looks amazing now. The change looks amazing because he cut off shit that isn't actually going to align with the end result that is needed, which is changing our gutters of some sort, whatever it is. It looks great. Right? But I think as business people, as salespeople, business owners, founders, whatever you are, right? I think the key is you need to
you need to get clarity, you need to get accountability, and it needs to be in alignment with whatever that end goal is. But you need to understand that there is a setup phase, there is an execution phase, and there is a finish. And when you finish is only when you should start setting up for that next setup, execution, and finish. And I think if you can do those things and you can understand that it is okay to have a dumpster in your meeting,
Right.
and say, actually, no, that idea, that might be version 2.0. Let's not try to push it now. Yeah. Right? No, that idea actually is not in alignment.
Sorry, I'm gonna laugh. You do this well, and I know that in certain settings with certain people, you use like a little bit more tact. But I notice sometimes, you know, we all have our limits, and it's like, so I was talking about something a couple whatevers ago, versions or combos. It was like a couple weeks ago. And you wanted to like go through the diatribe of like redirecting the idea, and I watched you try to start to like be polite, and then you gave up, and you were like, you know, Nathan, no. I was like, what the fuck? And you're like, no, no, we're not doing that. And I was like, yeah, like.
Well, I texted you that yesterday. I said, don't do that, bro.
I know. I was like, no, I swear we're on the same thing. But the way I always think about it is, I've said this to you before, so I want to share this funny part. And then, speaking of people that keep talking when the point's been made, I'm going to make 2 more points on top of our point.
But it's bringing value.
Yeah, it's
Fuck
value.
that guy that doesn't bring value. It's just like
Right.
just a contrarian asshole.
you.
You're
Fuck
like,
that guy.
dude, we're at the end of the meeting, bro. Like,
Oh, that's good. So I think of when that happens, when in Elf, he's got the.
you just call me an elf?
In the movie Elf, when when Buddy the Elf is stoked to spend the day with his dad, and on the Etch-a-Sketch, he like maps out what they're gonna do for the day, and then his dad shuts it down, and he's like, and then we're gonna eat candy or whatever, and then hug or whatever, and he's like, I have to go to work. He's like, okay, never mind, and he shakes it. That's how I feel in those moments where I'm like, and then we're gonna do this, or we're gonna do that, and it's like, no, and I'm like,
Yeah, no.
I'm like, I was joking. I didn't have it here on an Etch-a-Sketch. So anyway, 2 things as we close out today that came to mind as you were sharing that. Macro, micro. So one way to possibly map this out, and I wouldn't just mentally do it. Like I would get out a pen and a pad or put it in a Google Doc. I'm a big believer in like the old just jot it down. It worked for our founding fathers. I think you're not that special.
Yeah, he actually has a feather. And
Right, get a quill. Just
on
ink.
papyrus.
So you got to think like in terms of like, okay, maybe Q1 is set up and Q2 is execute and Q3 is finish. So there could be this like longer season, but just like a 6-minute match in college 7, you have 3 periods, right? Or a hockey game. So I was breaking down the sport, breaking down the bout, breaking down the match. And if I thought to myself, man, I have to wrestle another human being for like 6-7 whole minutes, that would just stress me out so bad. The other thing was that if I had to wrestle an entire human in all of their pieces and parts, that's stressful. So the way I could mentally break it down was, okay, I have a first period, a second period, a third period, and I'm going to put my entire body against that leg. So if it's my whole organism against that ankle, I got this. Because my setup isn't me versus all of them. It's breaking it down. And that's where I think constructing and building and evolving come in when you have this proper mindset. Because you're like, wait, if we attack this one thing, and that's the linchpin to set up all the other things, then now I'm setting, executing, finishing, setting, executing, finishing, setting, executing, finish. Because the thing you have to remember in that, and this the analogy with wrestling, it's so clear to me, for any wrestlers, you'll be like, I know exactly what he's talking about, is you can't discount or like not factor in pressure and like resistance. The person's not going to let you do it. They're not like, yeah, take me down. Great setup. Oh, love that finish. High five. Thanks for kicking my ass. So you have to build in tension, resistance, the elements that are going to try to stop you, which what does that look like in business? Cash flow, resistant to change, personnel, turnover, market shifts. Literally, like, it's summer, dude. People are going on vacation. The kids are home. This isn't the time to try to get that done because, you know, your employees that are working from home are less productive because the kids are home. Like, there's all these variables that you have to factor in. And I think it can help you, if nothing else, keep sane, let alone actually get it done, to where you think like, okay, this is going to be the setup season.
Yeah.
And within the setup season, there's setup, execute, finish. This is the execution finish, setup, execute, finish.
I was literally a part of a company, dude, who they wanted the account. They went from an SDR AE model to a where they wanted the AEs didn't prospect, and then they all of a sudden wanted the AEs to prospect because volume of meetings was down, and they made a change November 30th and expected, they were like, this is where we want the AEs to be on their dials. This is where we want them to be on their meetings. And dude, they literally, the AEs didn't do it. And they were like, why? And you're just like, bro, it's Christmas. Like, what are we doing?
Like, it's literally Thanksgiving just happened. You're in that, like, black hole.
So timing is so important,
like, people,
dude.
like, people are making cocoa.
Well, and I think even that, it's like you know, I never wrestled because I'm not cool, but like I would assume that there's a timing element to the execution on like, hey, I'm in the setup, but I need him to lift this arm or move his head or do this, and as soon as that happens, I'm making that execution.
And by the way, you have a handful, multiple setups, because the first one, they don't do the thing you hope they did, right? And you go, all right, well, I could just keep banging my head up against that wall. Yeah. And it's like they're on to you, man. You know, so now it's like, okay, I'm setting up the setup to set up the setup to then execute. So a good wrestler, a good opponent is not going to give you anything, right? So you have to. And at some point, this is the other thing, there's so many parallels here. At some point, you're going to have to just force your will. Yeah. You know, so like there's a moment where you're like, we're fucking doing it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like I told you about it. We were cool. We mastermind. But we're doing it. By the way, just for clarity's sake, because I want to make sure I didn't say this incorrectly. The only thing that I did that little, it wasn't about you coming to MyCore. It was about you being the president of MyCore before anyone had ever met you, right? So conventional wisdom would probably say something like, you know, don't do that. Do the offsite. Let everyone get comfortable. You know, let's see him work. And then, you know, like gateway drug everyone into him leading the company. And I was like, yeah, no, fuck that. So I took I put the onus on me, and I had conversations behind your back, right? Knowing that like they don't know enough about this person yet. Because how could they? We're in a remote workforce, and we hadn't had the event that we had in Colombia. But I think that like waste management and that ventilation system is so crucial, because I don't know that it would have gone as well as it has if that wasn't factored in too.
No, I agree, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because I had like tough conversations about it where I wanted to really make it clear, like, these are the reasons why I believe this is the right move. Yeah. And I created space for them to say things like, we don't even know this person. You know what I mean? I'm like, but do you know me? Yeah. And do you trust me? And then don't you think I have good? So it wasn't like that big of a deal. It was just like kind of teeter on that.
But I mean,
anyway, that wasn't about like you at large. It was just the role.
But that is a huge part of change management, because like there are people in your organization you need to run things by.
I'm sorry. I feel like at the end of this episode, you'd be like, who are those people? Which one?
I need to know their names. Off camera. I'm just like, listen.
It was only.
If anyone listened to my
3-1.
If anyone listened to my MyCore podcast, they know.
I'm not going to give you their name, but I'll give you what it rhymes with. I'm not saying anything.
It rhymes with Betty. Oh shit! It is Betty. But like, I think there is a lot of validity to what you're saying around setting up the setup with the people that, you know, may potentially be contrarian.
And by the way, you would hope that happened. If you're a real deal leader coming into a real deal organization with real deal leaders, and everybody's like, oh my God, welcome. Where are we going?
Yeah.
Like, then you are talking to chicken shit people.
Yeah,
Right?
you don't
Like,
even want that, yeah.
there better have been resistance.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? I'm coming in as a foreign object, and I'm going to be the president of the company in this short of form.
And I've got to create inertia, which is like, you know, and especially when the object is already in motion.
Right.
And it's like, it's moving forward, and I'm like, no, I want it to go this way.
Right,
Like,
because we're
there's
not a
lot that goes-
startup.
yeah.
Like we're still early stage, and we've stayed off the grid. But this isn't like two guys trying to put an idea together. Like there's 7 years of
and hundreds of clients. And
so
it's like-
that I liked how you put that inertia, that redirect evolution. It's all so intricate and complex, but I feel like we've been doing all right. I think we're doing okay with
I
this.
think so too.
How are you doing?
Dude, I think the change management has been great. But I think, like, to round this out, I think it really is like there is a difference between change and evolution. Change is needed and change happens, and when it does happen, so evolution, just based on this, like, evolution is evolving the thing. Right? It is saying, okay, cool. We may need new feature sets. We may need to rewrite some of the code. We do have a large volume of customers who pay us a lot of money that are saying that if we don't build this thing in the next 6 months, they will churn. Cool. But that is evolution. That is growing as an organization and the things that are necessary. Change is something that may potentially take you off your path. But the cool part about change is if you do it correctly and you set up and you execute and you finish and you have clarity in the reason, you have accountability in the crowdsourcing, and it is still in alignment with that end goal, it allows you to go off course but come right back on course like nothing has ever stopped. And I think there's so much that goes into the change. Change is not just, like you said, stepping in and going, hey, we're going to do this thing. There is a lot that goes into the change. There's a lot because when you take people off of their course, you need to tell them why. You need to have this like actual, there needs to be a manifesto of sorts of change, because otherwise it just looks like a change for the sake of change. It looks like you think that we have to be busy. It looks, in a lot of cases, change looks like micromanagement too, which can be a completely different episode.
I love the way you frame this, and I almost wasn't going to say this just to let you get the final thought, but I think it's too strong of an insight that you just gave, and kind of almost funny based on what we talked about with evolution and growing up in church. I think change is fear-based and evolution is faith-based.
Interesting.
Right? Like when people are changing for the sake of change, you can almost sense there's like a fear, like it's not working, you know what I mean? Like, like we have to change it, or I have a deadline, or you know, the investors or the leaders or my job. And evolution is like, yeah, we're good, man.
Yeah,
like we're right on track.
Yeah,
we're evolving this thing. So I think that's another barometer to possibly put things through, that kind of discernment of like, hey, if you want to implement a change and you believe that it is truly what's right and proper and on track and in alignment and all the aforementioned, you better be exemplifying your peace and your faith and your confidence and your stability
so good,
versus some neurotic, like.
Because I mean, I'm even just thinking about changes that have been made in organizations I've been a part of, and it's like, no, we're doing this because you listen to one of the SDR's calls and you think it sucks. Yeah, it's like you're scared of what happens if we stay on this path.
Scare money don't make money. That's what I'm trying to say.
Dude, that's the whole point of the podcast,
that's
bro.
What we should label.
Scare money don't make money. But yeah, no, I think that's really good. And I know that you've got your next guest waiting for the podcast, but I think
I'm in person today.
Yeah, dude,
Becca.
fired up, man. But I think
take
that
a little potty break first.
Yeah, the next
bring us home.
Yeah, the thing that I would say, and just to get super super tactical with this,
You?
yeah, not me, dude.
You got a playbook?
Yeah, right. I think it really is. It comes down to the setup, the execution, and the finish, and the timing. Change management isn't hard if you have set this up because you've gained clarity on it and why this thing needs to happen. You have crowdsourced the idea with people that are not your yes men, are not the people that are just sitting there and going to galvanize the hell out of you.
Right.
And that it's in alignment with where the train is going, where the organization is going. And to just double down on what you just said, and it's not made out of fear. I love that because, like, business is hard. Life is hard. It can be scary too. But do not change for the sake of change, or do not change because if we don't change, oh my God, we're going to die. Change because it is going to make you, your organization, your people better. Like the thing that we're doing right now with Profit Share, dude. Like that is a huge evolution.
That's good.
But not one time.
Yeah, I feel like our knuckles were dragging before that. Like I'm like, oh shit,
Dude. Yeah, dude. Now we're straight up. It's like we went from knuckle dragging to like the Mike, him dunking,
Literally,
right?
right.
But it's like, but not one time did you and I sit in this office going, bro, if we don't change anything about Profit Share, dude, we're gonna be so screwed. No, we said,
scared money
bro,
don't make money.
scared
bro.
money don't make money. That's all we say to each other. Like, dude, we don't even talk anything other than that. This is the only time we have real conversations. But
Actually, it's kind of true.
But I think like the biggest thing to look at like Profit Share is, dude, it was working.
Right.
But one thing we didn't do is we didn't take the train off the tracks. We just said, no. We are going to iterate on the train. We are going to renovate and do the things that need to happen in order to take us to the next level. We're going to scoop more coal into the oven or whatever, the engine, whatever it is in there, because it wasn't out of fear.
I got the coal.
I've got the black lung pop.
Getting
It's
the
like,
coal.
but I think that is the biggest key is like, do not make it out of fear. Make it out of alignment. Make it out of just like, dude, we are going to the next level and get the people excited. Like, dude, when Kenya dropped that website yesterday, bro.
Oh, dude, in the thumbnail?
Bro, the thumbnail looks sick. That's all that matters on your website, by the way.
This
guys.
isn't HR. This is people operations as a business growth strategy. What's up? Yeah, that's
people
a strong-
operations as a business growth strategy is absolutely not out of fear. There is no one in the market doing what Profit Share is doing. Absolutely not out of fear, but in alignment with the thread that you have always put, crowdsourced with everyone, right? Susan Marie and Curtis were a part of that. Ken and Patty were a part of that. Joe was, obviously Kenya was a part of that. Laura was a huge part of it. Right? It was crowdsourced and it was in alignment. And guess what? We've been talking about the changes of Profit Share for the last 2 months. So we have told them what we were going to tell them, all of the things that we're going to change. We crowdsourced all of the changes. We made sure that we were set up for success. And guess what? When it launched, Laura yesterday on the boot camp was literally talking like she had been providing these services for years, bro. Like Cheryl asked a question. Laura,
it's because she has been.
I know, yeah. But
we just haven't been charging.
But she's just sitting there like just boss mode because of all of the things that we talked about in this podcast happening in real time at MyCore. And I can tell you right now, if you guys have questions about change, if you have questions about evolution, if you are concerned about where you're going, hit us up. Like it is literally what we do on a day-to-day basis.
By the way, we got to keep plugging this. Save the date.
Yeah.
The Core Collective. This is the like coming attraction, the trailer, so to speak, the little morsels, breadcrumbs to what we're going to be doing over those 3 days in Eugene, Oregon. Last day of September, first few days of October. Like, be at the Core Collective. And if you are like for real about your biz and your leadership and your impact, got to be part of the VIP day. So we got to just like remember to keep promoting that.
Yeah. So don't hit us up. Just come and see us.
Yeah, no, that too. But you know, we're happy to talk in the meantime. But yeah, man, we're gonna talk about that. I'm stoked about what I think we could do leading into the event with the VIPs, the golden ticket. so that when they come into that room on that Monday, it's not like, hey, nice to meet you. It's like, hey, we've met like 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
We know your businesses, we know your journeys, and we're like ready to just serve that group. So, dude, high five. You would never get this.
You would never get this.
We're boring.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know why that popped. You actually will get this. Anyway, peace out. Good stuff, man.
See y'all.